Hello, and welcome. Today we step into a story about fear, silence, and the quiet power of one word. This is Year of Yes. How to Dance It Out. Stand in the sun and be your own person. By Shonda Rhimes. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Book Snap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. Now imagine this. You are the creator of worlds. Millions of people watch your stories on their screens every week. Your imagination has built empires, filled living rooms with laughter, tears, and wonder. You are at the height of success. And yet, behind closed doors, when the cameras are off, your life feels small, boxed in, hushed. You are hiding behind one word. No. That was Shonda Rhimes' reality. The world saw her as unstoppable. The genius behind Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder. But Shonda herself? She was shrinking. Invitations came, offers arrived, opportunities unfolded, and almost automatically, her mouth would form the word no. No to parties, no to interviews, no to events, no to anything that placed her outside the safety of her writing desk. It wasn't the loud kind of fear, the kind that makes you run screaming. It was a quiet fear, a whisper that sat in the back of her mind. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not enough? That whisper was powerful. It guided her choices without her even noticing. Saying no felt safe. No meant no rejection, no awkwardness, no risk. But it also meant no growth, no adventure, no joy. She describes her world at that time as narrow. She had success, but she wasn't living. She was working, yes, but she was not fully alive. Fear had built a cage around her, a golden cage, decorated with awards and recognition, but still a cage. And then, one evening, everything shifted with a single sentence from her sister. It was Thanksgiving. The house was buzzing with family chatter, food being passed around, the warmth of familiarity. In the middle of it all, her sister casually turned to her and said, "You never say yes to anything." The words landed with a sting. They weren't shouted. They weren't cruel. They were simply spoken as fact. But Shonda felt exposed, seen in a way she hadn't expected. She realized her sister was right. She had built an empire on saying yes to her characters' stories, while saying no to her own. That night she sat with the discomfort. She replayed the words over and over. You never say yes to anything. It was both an accusation and an invitation. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the stirrings of something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. The whisper of no had kept her safe. But safe had turned into stagnant. She began to wonder. What if she tried something different? What if she flipped the script? What if, just for a year, she replaced no with yes? It was a terrifying thought. Yes meant stepping out of the shadows. Yes meant opening herself to failure, to criticism, to vulnerability. But it also meant opening herself to life. And maybe, just maybe, yes could be the key to unlocking the parts of herself she had buried. The whisper of no had ruled her life for too long. Now, the year of yes was about to begin. The house was alive with the rhythm of Thanksgiving. Children's laughter ricocheted off the walls. The smell of roasted turkey mingled with the sweetness of pies cooling on the counter, and plates clinked against each other as they were passed down the table. Shonda sat among her family, but her mind was elsewhere, drifting as it often did. She had always been more comfortable in her head, where characters obeyed her and plots unfolded with order and beauty. Real life, with its unpredictable conversations and its demand for presence, had always felt harder. And then, without warning, her sister leaned close, her voice sharp but casual, almost as though she were pointing out a stain on the tablecloth. You never say yes to anything. The words stopped Shonda cold. For a moment she laughed, brushed it off. But deep down, the remark struck something raw. The room kept moving, the clatter of silverware continued, yet inside her, silence bloomed. She kept eating, nodding, smiling, but the phrase wouldn't let go. It echoed in her ears, louder than the holiday noise. You never say yes to anything. On the surface, it didn't seem true. She was the creator of some of the most successful television shows in history. She had said yes to writing, yes to creating, yes to building a career that demanded brilliance. But her sister wasn't talking about her work. She was talking about life. About dinners she skipped, parties she avoided, invitations she declined, interviews she refused, even playtime with her own children that she brushed aside with excuses. Later that night, when the house had quieted and the dishes were done, Shonda sat alone with those words. She realized that saying no had become her armor. No kept her hidden. No kept her from being judged. No gave her control. But that same armor had hardened into a shell that suffocated her spirit. She wasn't living. She was merely producing. The truth hit hard. Success had become a hiding place. She had built a fortress of work, and while the world admired it, she was trapped inside. She had allowed fear to disguise itself as practicality, as busyness, as introversion. But underneath, it was fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of failing outside the safety of her scripts. Her sister's comment felt like a challenge. It was as if someone had placed a mirror in front of her and forced her to look at the reflection she'd been avoiding. The realization was uncomfortable, almost painful. But it was also electrifying. In that discomfort, a seed was planted. A question she couldn't shake. What would happen if I said yes? Yes to dinner invitations? Yes to speaking engagements? Yes to playtime? Yes to life? The thought made her heart race. Fear rose immediately. What if yes exposed her? What if she wasn't good enough? What if yes led to humiliation? But then, another thought followed close behind. What if yes set her free? That night, she decided. Quietly, without fanfare, without telling anyone, she whispered to herself a promise. For 1 year, she would say yes. Not selectively, not when it was convenient, but yes to everything that scared her. The table was still littered with crumbs and glasses from Thanksgiving dinner, but in her heart, a new season had begun. A season not of hiding, but of opening. A year that would test her, break her, and ultimately rebuild her. A year where the word yes would change everything. The word sat there, small and defiant, like a stone dropped into still water. Yes. It didn't roar like victory. It didn't glitter like success. It didn't sparkle like fame. It was simple, almost plain. But Shonda Rhimes knew its power because she had felt what its opposite had done to her life. No had been her shield, her hiding place, her cocoon. Yes could be the key to a different kind of existence. So she crafted a pact with herself. It wasn't grand or ceremonial. No audience, no announcement, no press release. Just a quiet whisper in her own mind. For 1 year, whenever fear tried to make her retreat, she would choose yes instead. It was an experiment, a rebellion against her own habits. At first, it felt absurd. Say yes to everything? Did that mean saying yes to things she didn't want? Yes to things that weren't safe? No. She would still honor her boundaries. But the rule was this: if fear was the only reason she wanted to say no, then yes was the answer. The pact was both liberating and terrifying. It meant stepping into rooms she had avoided, conversations she had dodged, possibilities she had shut out. It meant exposing herself to the world, to its judgments, but also, maybe, to its joy. The first opportunities came quickly. Invitations that she would have once dismissed began to feel like tests, each one a door she had to push open. The very act of considering yes made her aware of how automatic her no's had been. It wasn't just social events she had refused, it was life itself. She realized that saying yes was about more than attending parties or giving speeches. It was about reclaiming agency from the grip of fear. It was about choosing expansion over contraction, growth over safety. Each yes would be an act of defiance, a small rebellion against the version of herself that had been hiding in the shadows. But before she could leap, she had to face the truth. Yes would change her. It wouldn't just alter her calendar, it would alter her identity. She had built her life around the quiet safety of no. Could she survive without it? Could she stand in the sun without flinching? The year of yes was not just a resolution. It was a declaration of war against fear, a vow to meet life head-on. She didn't know what it would demand or where it would take her. She only knew that the time for silence was over. And so, with one word, Shonda opened the door. The first test arrived almost immediately. A letter. An invitation. The kind she usually tossed into a pile without a second glance. This one came from Dartmouth, her alma mater. They wanted her to give the commencement speech. Her instinct, as always, was swift and familiar. No. Absolutely not. Never. The thought of standing in front of thousands of graduates and their families, her words echoing across a stadium, filled her with dread. Writing was safe because she could hide behind her characters. Speaking, live and unedited, was exposure. It was stepping into a spotlight that offered no protection. But then she remembered the pact. The word. Yes. The rule was clear. If fear was the only reason to refuse, then yes was required. She sat there staring at the letter, her stomach knotted, palms sweating, every part of her screaming to decline. And yet, the whisper of her sister's words haunted her. You never say yes to anything. So she said it, quietly at first, then louder, yes. When the day finally came, she stood backstage in her academic robe, her heart thundering. The air was heavy, the crowd a sea of faces waiting, expectant. Her hands shook. Her voice threatened to betray her. She could have turned and run, but the year of yes had already begun. She walked onto the stage. The applause hit her like a wave. It wasn't the sound of judgment. It was the sound of welcome. She stood there, blinking against the bright sunlight, and began to speak. Her voice wavered at first, but as the words tumbled out, she felt something loosen inside. The fear didn't vanish, but it no longer controlled her. She looked out at the graduates, at their wide eyes and open futures, and realized she wasn't just talking to them. She was talking to herself. Every sentence was a reminder. She had a voice worth hearing. She had a story worth sharing. And the world wanted to listen. By the time she finished, the crowd rose in applause again, and this time she didn't shrink from it. She let it wash over her, let it fill her. For the first time, she felt the sunlight directly on her skin, and she didn't run for shade. That speech was more than a commencement address. It was a beginning, a crack in the shell of no, a taste of what yes could feel like, terrifying, exhilarating, alive. She walked off the stage knowing one thing for certain. She would never be the same again. The applause should have been easy to accept. After all, Shonda had built shows that millions adored. She had won awards, walked red carpets, held trophies in her hands. But every time someone praised her, she would deflect. She would shrink, brush it off, or quickly redirect the attention elsewhere. Compliments made her uncomfortable, as if she were being caught in a lie. For years she told herself she didn't need the applause, that she was fine just staying in the background, letting her characters take the stage. But deep down, it wasn't humility. It was fear. Fear that if she accepted praise, she'd have to believe it. And if she believed it, maybe one day she'd disappoint everyone. So she kept saying no. No to recognition, no to acknowledgement, no to the idea that she was worthy. The year of yes changed that. One night, at a glamorous Hollywood event, she found herself standing on a stage again, this time being honored for her groundbreaking work. The crowd applauded, and as always, her first instinct was to look away, to downplay, to rush through her thanks. But she caught herself. This was a moment to practice. This was a moment to say yes. So she tried something new. She stood there and simply said, "Thank you." She let the applause land. She didn't deflect or shrink. She stood still and absorbed it. It was uncomfortable, almost unbearable at first, like holding her breath underwater. But slowly it shifted. The applause no longer felt like a spotlight burning her. It felt like warmth. It felt like love. In that moment, she realized that saying yes wasn't just about showing up to events or taking on new challenges. It was also about allowing joy into her life. Accepting compliments was a way of saying yes to connection, yes to recognition, yes to the truth that she was not invisible. She began practicing it in small ways. When someone told her they loved her work, instead of dismissing it, she said, "Thank you." When someone praised her strength, she resisted the urge to argue. Each yes became a practice of standing in her own worth, of owning the space she occupied. It was like learning to walk all over again, shaky at first but steadier with each step. The more she said yes to compliments, the less she felt the need to hide. The armor of no began to crack, and through those cracks, light started pouring in. For the first time, she wasn't just creating stories for others to love. She was beginning to love her own. There was one battlefield where Shonda had always refused to show up. Her own body. She had carried her weight like a secret and a shield, an armor that kept people at a distance and allowed her to disappear behind her work. Hollywood is a place obsessed with appearances, and she had long ago decided she would not play that game. So she said no. No to cameras, no to attention, no to the idea that her body could be anything other than a burden. But the year of yes did not allow her to keep hiding. The pact was clear. If fear was the reason for her refusal, she had to say yes. And fear was everywhere when it came to her body. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of trying and not succeeding. So she said yes to health. Not to a number on a scale, not to fitting into a dress, but to the idea of caring for herself. Yes to moving. Yes to sweating. Yes to feeding her body with something other than exhaustion and takeout food eaten over scripts. It was not glamorous. It was not easy. The first steps were heavy, painful, awkward. Every run felt like a battle. Every workout felt like a war waged against years of neglect. But slowly, something shifted. The act of saying yes to her body was not about punishment. It was about love. Each step, each choice, was a way of saying, "I deserve to feel alive. I deserve to care for myself the way I care for everyone else." And with that came another revelation. She had spent years pouring into her characters, her shows, her career, her family. She had said yes to everyone else's needs, but she had been saying no to her own. Health became her first act of saying yes to herself. It wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about reclaiming the body she already lived in, a body that had carried her through years of work, through motherhood, through exhaustion. A body that had been waiting patiently for her to stop hiding and start honoring it. As she began to change, she noticed something unexpected. The weight wasn't just physical, it was emotional. With every yes to herself, she shed a little of the shame, the silence, the hiding. She wasn't just lighter in body, she was lighter in spirit. The year of yes was teaching her something profound. Saying yes to life also meant saying yes to herself. And for perhaps the first time, she was willing to stand in the truth of her own worth, in the body she had always tried to escape, and claim it as her own. Claim it as her own. Claim it as her own. The work never stopped. Scripts stacked high on her desk. Deadlines loomed like storm clouds. Calls, meetings, rewrites. Her life had become an endless cycle of production. And in the middle of it all were three small voices tugging at her sleeve, begging her to play. "Mommy, will you play with us?" Always, her answer had been the same. "No. Mommy's busy. Mommy's working. Mommy doesn't have time." It wasn't cruel. It was automatic. Work came first. Work was safety. Work was where she shined. Play felt frivolous, unnecessary, even dangerous. If she stopped working, who would she be? But the year of yes left no room for that excuse. Fear wasn't the only thing she was avoiding. She was also avoiding joy. So the next time her children asked, she paused. She swallowed the automatic no. She heard her own rule echoing back at her. She whispered, almost reluctantly, "Yes." Something remarkable happened. Her children's eyes lit up. Their joy was immediate, contagious. She found herself on the floor, laughing, covered in glitter and glue, making up stories with plastic toys, chasing little feet around the room. At first it felt strange, even indulgent, like she was trespassing in a world that wasn't meant for her. But slowly she realized this was life. This was what she had been missing while hiding behind her work. Play was not wasteful. Play was medicine. It was connection, laughter, presence. It was a reminder that living fully meant more than producing shows and collecting awards. It meant rolling on the floor with your children, dancing in the kitchen, letting yourself be silly and unpolished. In saying yes to play, Shonda was saying yes to being human again. She discovered that joy had been waiting for her all along, right there in the sparkle of her children's eyes. And every time she chose play over work, she wasn't losing productivity. She was gaining life. The year of yes was reshaping her, one small choice at a time. Saying yes to play reminded her that success is not measured only by scripts written or ratings earned. Sometimes, success is measured by the sound of your own laughter echoing through a room. For years, Shonda had worn a mask. The mask of the invincible woman. The one who could do it all. Write, produce, mother, manage, lead. The one who needed no help. The one who never admitted exhaustion, never showed weakness, never allowed a crack in the armor. It was a performance as polished as any script she had ever written, and the world applauded. But beneath the applause, she was drowning. The year of yes forced her to confront the truth. She was not a superhero. She was human. And humans need help. The first time she admitted it, her throat tightened. She said yes when someone offered to babysit her children. She said yes when a colleague offered to take something off her plate. She said yes to leaning on her village. Each yes tasted like defeat at first, as if she were confessing failure. But slowly, it began to taste like freedom. The mask of Superwoman had been heavy. It had pressed on her shoulders, demanded her silence, punished her for needing rest. Removing it felt like peeling off armor that had fused with her skin. Vulnerable, yes. Exposed, yes. But also lighter. She realized that pretending to do it all wasn't strength. It was fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being seen as less, fear of not being enough. But the truth was, asking for help was not weakness. It was courage. It was trust. It was acknowledging that she didn't have to carry everything alone. Her children noticed. They saw a mother who wasn't just tired and overworked, but present. Her friends noticed too. Instead of pushing them away with excuses, she said yes to their offers, yes to companionship, yes to letting them carry her when she couldn't carry herself. The year of yes wasn't about becoming more powerful. It was about shedding the illusion that she already was. Strength wasn't in the mask. Strength was in the willingness to take it off. As the mask slipped away, something new emerged. Shonda herself. unarmored, imperfect, human. And for the first time, she began to see that being her true self might be the bravest yes of all. The year of yes had begun as a rebellion against fear, but along the way Shonda discovered another truth. Saying yes did not mean surrendering to everything. It also meant learning the sharp, necessary power of no. For years she had used no as a shield, but it had been aimed in the wrong direction. She had said no to joy, no to risk, no to love. Yet when it came to things that drained her, relationships that left her hollow, obligations that stole her energy, requests that suffocated her, she said yes out of guilt, out of habit, out of fear of disappointing others. Now the balance shifted. She realized that every yes carried weight. Every yes was a piece of her time, her energy, her life. And if she gave those pieces away carelessly, there would be nothing left for herself, nothing left for what truly mattered. So she began to practice. When invitations arrived that promised only exhaustion, she said no. When people demanded her time but never gave back, she said no. When voices around her tried to shape her into someone she was not, she said no. At first it felt like betrayal. She had built her identity on pleasing others, on being reliable, on carrying everything. To say no was to risk rejection, disapproval, anger. But she began to see it differently. Every no was also a yes. To her children, to her health, to her joy, to her peace. Saying no was not about shutting the world out. It was about choosing what was worth letting in. Some people pulled away when they heard her no. Some relationships cracked under the weight of her boundaries. And though it hurt, she recognized the gift in it. The ones who truly loved her stayed. The ones who only wanted what she could give drifted off. Her circle grew smaller but also stronger. The year of yes was not about reckless acceptance. It was about clarity. It was about standing in her own truth, unafraid to say yes to life, and equally unafraid to say no to what dimmed it. With each no, she felt herself grow taller, freer, more rooted. For the first time, her life wasn't being drained by obligation. It was being fueled by choice. There was a moment when Shonda realized she had been living with two voices inside her head. One was the voice of the world, the critics, the fans, the expectations, the endless chatter of what she should be, how she should act, what she should say. The other was her own voice, small and muffled, buried under layers of no. For years she had silenced it, afraid it was too loud, too awkward, too different. But the year of yes kept pulling her back to it. Every time she said yes, to speaking, to compliments, to play, to health, she felt her own voice rise a little stronger. And with it came the realization: authenticity was not something to fear. It was the very thing she had been searching for. Hollywood thrives on masks, glossy images, polished personas, carefully crafted appearances. Shonda had been content to hide behind her scripts, to let her characters speak for her. But when she stepped out, when she allowed her true self to be seen, her awkwardness, her humor, her joy, people didn't recoil. They leaned in. They loved her not despite her authenticity, but because of it. She began to see that the world doesn't need another perfect mask. It needs truth. It needs voices that are raw, real, unapologetic. And in saying yes to her own truth, she gave others permission to do the same. This wasn't easy. Authenticity meant vulnerability. It meant admitting when she was wrong, when she was tired, when she was afraid. It meant letting people see the cracks instead of hiding them. But the cracks, she realized, were where the light got in. And with that light came creativity. The more she said yes to her own voice, the more her writing came alive. Her characters breathed deeper. Her stories carried more weight. Her worlds shimmered with a new kind of authenticity. Saying yes to her truth unlocked not just her life, but her art. Yes to authenticity was not about becoming someone new. It was about coming home to herself. It was about standing in the sun, unshielded, unhidden, and realizing she didn't need the armor of no anymore. Her voice was enough. She was enough. There came a day when Shonda no longer flinched from the light. She had spent years ducking away from it, afraid that if she stood too long in its warmth, people would see her too clearly. But the year of yes had been slowly peeling back the layers, stripping away fear, shame, and silence. And one afternoon, standing in front of a crowd, she realized something had shifted. She was no longer hiding. She was basking. The sunlight on her face was no longer a threat. It was a celebration. She began to see herself not as a shadow behind her characters, but as a woman allowed to shine in her own right. She could dance without apology, laugh without shrinking, live without disguises. She found joy in saying yes to the things that made her heart beat faster. Yes to being photographed, even if she didn't feel camera ready. Yes to dancing at parties, not as a performance, but as pure release. Yes to stepping onto stages where she once feared she didn't belong. And every time she danced in the sunlight, literally and metaphorically, she felt something new. Freedom. The kind of freedom that comes not from escaping judgment, but from realizing it no longer controls you. Her children saw it too. They saw a mother who played in the yard, who spun in circles until she was dizzy, who let joy spill out of her without restraint. She was no longer just the woman who created worlds on screen. She was a woman fully alive in her own world. The sunlight became a symbol. It was presence. It was joy. It was the opposite of fear. And each time she said yes to standing in it, she became less of a ghost in her own life and more of a participant. Saying yes had taught her how to live. But now, in this season of dancing and light, she was beginning to learn something even greater: how to celebrate living. Not just surviving, not just achieving, but rejoicing in who she was, as she was, in this very moment. The dance was no longer about performance, it was about freedom. The calendar marked the end of the year. 12 months of yes. 12 months of saying yes to fear, yes to joy, yes to truth, yes to herself. Shonda looked back and barely recognized the woman who had once hidden in the shadows of her own success. When she began, she thought the experiment might make her braver, maybe even more productive. She didn't expect it to make her more alive. She didn't expect it to pull her out of the cage she had built from fear. She didn't expect it to teach her that the greatest yes of all was not to opportunity or applause or even play, but to herself. She had learned that yes could be a sword, cutting through silence and fear. But she had also learned that no could be a shield, protecting her from the weight of expectations and obligations that drained her spirit. Together, yes and no had become her tools for freedom. She had learned that play matters, that laughter matters, that joy is not a distraction from life's work. It is life's work. She had learned to love the body she lived in, not as a project to be fixed, but as a home to be honored. She had learned to accept help, to take off the mask of perfection, to let others see her humanity. And most of all, she had learned that her voice, her true, unfiltered, authentic voice, was enough. That she didn't need to hide behind her characters, her scripts, her shows. She could stand in the sun, unafraid, and speak as herself. The year ended, but the lessons did not. Saying yes was no longer a challenge. It was a way of being, a way of meeting life with open hands instead of clenched fists, a way of dancing in the sunlight instead of shrinking in the shadows. Shonda Rhimes stepped out of the year of yes not as someone new, but as someone finally whole. She hadn't reinvented herself. She had simply uncovered herself. And in that discovery, she found freedom. The giant within her had always been there. She had just needed one small word to awaken it, word to awaken it, word to